Welcome to the Wonderful Seagulls podcast, where we explore the loud, clever, chaotic world of urban gulls. Before we dive into today's gull story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more urban wildlife, gull behavior, and neighborhood drama. Today, we're looking at one of the biggest mysteries happening right in our own neighborhoods. If you've ever watched a gull nest, you know these birds are incredibly devoted, fiercely protective parents. They guard those fluffy chicks around the clock. But then, seemingly overnight, the parents just vanish. The young are left entirely to fend for themselves. Why on earth does that happen?
It really is a complete 180-degree turn. We're talking about going from the ultimate helicopter parenting, where the adults are aggressively diving at literally anyone who even glances at their nest, to what looks like complete indifference.
Right. It feels almost like ghosting. You have these pampered chicks getting endless free meals, and suddenly, bam! The restaurant is closed and the chefs have left town. It's known as the fledgling paradox, and the biology behind why they actually do this is absolutely fascinating.
We are going to solve this biological cold case together. In this episode, we'll start with Part 1, the parental pivot, followed by Part 2, the weaning clock. Then we'll cover Part 3, the evolutionary math, and Part 4, the hormone drivers. We'll wrap things up with Part 5, foraging 101, and finally Part 6, the first-year bottleneck.
Okay, so let's start with Section 1, the parental pivot, and how they transition to autonomy.
It's important to understand that the parents stepping away isn't just one sudden event. It's more of a progressive transition over a few weeks.
Yeah, so around days 40 to 48, the chicks achieve their first flight. They start exploring, but they still treat the nest as their personal dining room.
But the real drama happens between day 70 and 80. The research shows a severe behavioral inflection point here. Fledgling attendance on the territory drops drastically. It goes from 85% at day 74 down to a mere 6% by day 80. The parents literally just refuse to feed them anymore.
And what's brilliant is how adaptable different gull species are here. Take the black-legged kittiwake, for instance. They nest on tiny, precarious cliff ledges, so they have an incredibly brief care window. They fledge and are completely independent by 50 to 60 days. Contrast that with the nearshore western gulls. Because they have easily defendable coastal food patches with low competition, these parents are comparatively huge softies. They might extend care for up to 180 days. They literally let their kids hang around and eat mussels with them for months. But across the board, the cutoff eventually comes for all of them.
Moving right along to Section 2, nature's hardwired weaning clock.
This brings up a massive question. Are these parents abandoning their young because they're simply running out of food, or is something else entirely driving this behavior? Scientists wondered the exact same thing, which leads us to this incredible long-term herring gull study on Clam Island in New Jersey. The birds here had access to superabundant, high-quality marine prey. It was basically an endless, all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. The population was thriving, literally doubling. But here is the kicker. Despite the absolute abundance of food and no nutritional stress whatsoever, the parents still systematically evicted their young right on schedule, between day 70 and 80. It proves this is a hardwired biological clock, not just a desperate response to starvation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the evolutionary math behind this seemingly harsh strategy. To understand why that weaning clock is so strict, we have to realize that while it might look like tough love, there's a beautifully logical strategy behind it. It all comes down to a concept called residual reproductive value, or RRV. Gulls are long-lived birds. They can easily live for 20 years or more. So an adult gull has to carefully balance the energy it spends on this year's chick against its expectation of having many more chicks over the next decade or two. Exactly. And that introduces Triver's parent-offspring conflict theory. Simply put, the teenager wants endless free meals because it only cares about its own survival. But the parent is equally related to all its future unborn chicks too.
It's basically a biological standoff. The parent knows that if they exhaust themselves overfeeding a flying teenager who is already perfectly capable of surviving, they might not survive the winter themselves. So natural selection favors the parent who cuts the kid off to maintain their own health.
Let's look at Section 4, the hormone drivers, to see the internal mechanisms at work. See, the parents aren't making a conscious mathematical decision to be tough. Their internal mechanisms are physically forcing this change. It's all about two hormones, prolactin and corticosterone. During early chick rearing, high prolactin makes the parents super attentive and drives the regurgitation feeding reflex. But by days 60 to 90, prolactin drops steeply and corticosterone rises. That drop in prolactin literally abolishes the gull's regurgitation reflex. So when a 75-day-old juvenile approaches begging for food, the parent's brain no longer says, "Oh, feed my baby."
It says, "Who is this annoying competitor and why are they pecking at my beak?"
And here is the fantastic biological twist. The gulls actually must drop their prolactin levels. Why? Because high prolactin physically inhibits the growth of new feathers. They have to downregulate it to trigger their postnuptial molt.
Growing an entirely new set of flight feathers before the harsh autumn storms arrive is incredibly energy-heavy. It's completely incompatible with feeding a demanding youngster. They literally have to choose between keeping their kids fed or getting new wings so they can survive the winter.
So, that leads us to Section 5, Foraging 101, and how they learn to survive.
Once the parents leave, how on earth do these wonderfully chaotic juveniles learn to feed themselves with zero instruction? Well, they have to figure it out through trial and error. The clam dropping research is a perfect and honestly very endearing example of this. You've probably seen gulls drop shells on hard surfaces to crack them. Well, juveniles actually have perfect motor mechanics right away. They can drop a clam just as well as an adult. Their problem is the cognitive bottleneck, prey selection. First winter birds lack the life experience to judge what is actually worth dropping, so they end up picking up useless tiny shells with no meat inside or hilariously oversized rocks that are way too heavy to carry. It takes them weeks of practice to calibrate their choices.
To speed up that learning curve, they intensely watch older birds. It's called stimulus enhancement. If an adult flock finds food, the juveniles use their white plumage as a visual beacon and fly right over to copy them. They also play. If you see a young gull repeatedly dropping a twig or a piece of plastic and catching it mid-air before it hits the water, that's solitary object play. It's adorable, but it's actually crucial neuromuscular training for mid-air acrobatics like recovering dropped food before a neighbor swoops in to steal it.
And, their individual personalities actually shape where they end up using those skills. Research on lesser black-backed gulls shows that high exploration, bold juveniles are the ones that confidently move into complex urban environments. They're the ones navigating our human neighborhoods. Meanwhile, the lower exploration, shyer phenotypes stick to predictable agricultural fields or quiet coastal habitats. They actively match their habitat to their own personality.
Which brings us to our final section, number 6, the first-year bottleneck and the demographic realities. Regardless of where they go, the transition to independence is tough. It's a pretty sobering demographic reality.
A newly independent first-year herring gull has only a 39% probability of surviving its first year. The learning curve for finding food and surviving winter storms is incredibly steep.
When you compare that to the adult survival rate, which is an excellent 75 to 85%, you see just how significant that bottleneck really is.
Exactly. That harsh first year is the evolutionary crucible. It's a gauntlet for sure, but it's precisely what creates the incredibly resilient, intelligent, and long-lived adult gulls we see dominating the skies today.
This quote from the research really sums it up perfectly. Natural selection favors parents that terminate care promptly, preserving its own condition to breed across multiple future seasons. It completely reframes the whole story. What looks like bad parenting or cruel abandonment on the surface is actually a brilliant, deeply optimized strategy. It ensures the survival and success of the entire species over decades.
So the next time you see a brown, speckled juvenile gull fumbling with a clam or dropping a twig in midair, I hope you see them with newfound respect. They aren't just causing a ruckus, they are navigating an incredible biological transition and figuring out the world entirely on their own.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like the video and subscribe for more gull stories, urban wildlife, and the ongoing adventures of gulls.